ourselves, but also with those around us. And awareness on your own mental health and your employees' well being can dramatically shift productivity and organizational success for the better. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we are thrilled as a Burnout Panel to bring together this incredible group of experts to explore vital strategies for enhancing mental well being in the home and in the workplace. But first, who is the Burnout Panel? Yes, yes, yes. So I'll start myself. Hi, I am Vanessa Zami, President and Chief Training Officer of Liberation X, the catalyst for work-life harmony and leadership development. Okay, we'll do a little round of applause here. I don't know if anyone can hear that. Hopefully. And we have Aileen Axmeyer. Aileen helps companies create cultures of well-being by empowering employees with tools to come back from burnout. Give a wave, Aileen. Give a wave. Yes, yes. Then we have Audrey. Audrey Hulst works with high-performing teams and individuals to rewire perfectionism and work stress into a culture of excellence. Give a wave, give a wave. Yes, yes, yes. Woo, woo, woo. Then we have Kate Donovan, the host of the esteemed Fried the Burnout podcast and an international keynote speaker. Give a wave, a wave. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I keep forgetting when I switch screens, it stops. But anyways, so Dr. Sandra Lewis works with organizations and women who want to relieve burnouts and reignite their capacity to make the impact that matters to them. Dr. Sandra. Yes. Okay. Okay. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Sharon Grossman is a psychologist and consultant specializing in transforming teams from overwhelm into optimal performance without burning out. Wait, wait, wait. Yes, yes, yes. And we are here today to discuss these strategies for enhancing mental well being in the workplace. Now, I think what's really helpful in these scenarios is when, especially in the panel, you're sort of like, this is a lot of people. Who should I be listening to? Everyone. But I would love if all the panelists can go around and maybe share your personal experience related to fostering a healthy mindset amidst burnout, right? So let's see. Let's start with Aileen.
Sure. So my 30-second burnout story is I burnt out when I was caring for my mom while she unfortunately was dying, while raising a newborn daughter, while running my business during the pandemic. So just a little bit of a wild time there. And I knew that the demand on my resources was higher than was sustainable for me to keep up with. And yet I knew I wouldn't get time with my mom after whatever amount I was given left. And so for me, the mindset was, this sucks and this is not sustainable, but I'm still going to push my resources, push myself to show up for my people because I know it's temporary. And I know that I'm going to prioritize my rest, recovery, and my self-care and really like full healing after this season of life. And so I think that the applicable mindset shift or mindset to bring in for anybody, regardless of what's going on, is one, know that not all burnout is preventable. And two, meet yourself with self-compassion through that time. And then especially after when you're in that healing phase.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Aileen. That self-compassion is definitely very, very important. Audrey, yes, what was your experience?
Yeah, so my experience hinged a lot on internal factors that created burnout. It's one of the reasons why I work with perfectionists. I am also a recovering perfectionist. I was kind of one of the reasons that I've done so many interviews with perfectionists and talk about it so much and created the perfectionist archetypes was because I was a pretty noticeably hero perfectionist, where I was always picking up things that didn't even need to be picked up. And I was kind of fixing things for people on a regular basis. So I was owning and managing and teaching at a yoga studio and picking up stuff where I didn't need to be picking up stuff, holding other people's things for them. And and putting a lot of pressure on myself internally. So that's one of those things that burnout can be external circumstances, like Aileen was talking about. Sometimes it's things that we can't help, but then there are also factors that come into play that might be internal pressures or expectations that come in. So a lot of mine were internal and created a lot of physical symptoms and sickness. And that took a long time for me to even recognize that it was burnout, because I was so deep in it that I couldn't really tell that that's what I was experiencing. But so kind of pulling on the threads and slowly unwinding that and understanding that the expectations I was creating for myself were not realistic. And that's been kind of a journey, untangling those threads as I've gone along.
Let me know in the comments if you can relate to that. Okay. The Superman, Superwoman, perfectionist, that expectations and pressure you're putting on yourself, right? And Audrey touched a little bit on the symptoms. We'll be going into that today as well, too, during this panel. And so thank you, Audrey, for sharing that with us. We look forward to hearing some more goodness from you. Yes, yes. Kate, what is your story?
So I was absolutely whopped up the head by burnout. I had no idea it was coming. I was very confused that it happened. I was a stress management expert, an acupuncturist, a practitioner of Chinese medicine. I had all of the skills to not end up in this place. But before burnout happened to me, I didn't even know what burnout was. And when I figured it out, I read an article, I went ding, 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 and I started reviewing how I felt. My mindset before burnout was, you're never going to be good enough. You always have to do more. And if you don't continue to work extra hard, hustle, you're not going to have enough money to pay your bills next month. I've always worked for myself. So that entrepreneurial mindset of not knowing where my money for October was coming from pushed me to this idea that unless I was over earning all the time, I was never going to have enough money to cover my bills. So this is just a small portion, but my pre-burnout mindset was nothing is ever enough. Not you, not what you do, not who you are, not the money you have, not the nothing is enough. And my post-burnout mindset is, this is pretty cool. And that's it.
I love that. I love that. And that's all it has to be. That's all it has to be. That's it. And that's all it has to be. Yes. Thank you so much, Kate. That hustle and grind, nothing is enough it's cool. Love that. Love that. Dr. Sandra, please share with us. Ooh, are you muted? Oh, wait, there we go.
I'm good now. So my worst burnout episode came in my career as a professor and turned into the driveway of my office, and my heart started pounding. I was in deep anxiety, and I was like, whoa, I don't think I can come back to work. Like, this is not good. Now, being a psychologist, I'd read about burnout, but there I was in it. And I would say the things that got me there was a combination of things. Some of that push, some of that knowing that you have to be, that idea that you have to give more. And if somebody else is giving, do a little bit more, make them feel really good about what they're doing and do what you do as well. There was also some microaggressions and some racism that I was dealing with. And those things combined, just actually on the way to burnout, I just said, okay, just ignore it. Just keep trying to get the job done. Keep trying to get the job done. But then when the job was done, I turned into the driveway and I was in an anxiety attack because I finally had room to hear my own body. I didn't listen to my body. I totally disconnected from myself. And I would say to anybody, every day, as hard as life gets, keep listening to your body, because your body will always be absolutely truthful with you. Your body will never lie. And if you keep that conversation open with your body, you'll actually be able to start to ease your way out and back to yourself. So that's what I'd share today.
Love that. And there's more to come because we have many more minutes. So there's more to come for those listening. Thank you, Dr. Sandra, for sharing that. If you are resonating with this, in the comments down below on the LinkedIn, please share with us and let us know if you've had a similar experience where you felt it in your body, where you felt whether you had a panic attack or if you feel as though you might be approaching that as well too, please share with us. Dr. Sharon, what's your story?
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that we are having this conversation and listening to all of you here on the panel share your stories. I think just really resonates for me because it is like when you're doing this work of helping people recover from their burnout, it has to be something you're passionate about. And as I'm hearing you talk about this is so purposeful for me. So similar to Dr. Sandra, I'm also a psychologist, and I spent my career listening to people primarily talk about things that stress them out, things that make them depressed, and things that have been traumatizing to them. And I think that, as you just heard from our panelists, burnout and stress happen to people for different reasons. And that's one of the things that really excites me, is really kind of getting to the root of what is behind your situation. And it's not a one size fits all, which is why it's good that you're hearing from different people here on the panel. We each have our different perspective, our different life experiences, and our expertise. And for me, part of what I am really excited about sharing is how you think about stress. And I think that's an important thing, because oftentimes, I mean, life just happens and we get stressed out. But then when we notice that we're stressed, if we think that stress is a bad thing, then we become stressed about our stress. And it just kind of magnifies the whole situation. So I think a lot of it is having some self awareness and realizing maybe there's a different way of thinking about things that can be really helpful to you. And as Dr. Sandra also mentioned, it's about paying attention to your body and recognizing what feels good to you and listening to your intuition, because your gut really knows the truth.
It does. It really does know the truth. It really does know the truth. Thank you all for sharing your stories. At the end of the day, I think you can all hear, for those listening, that, our work, each of us, our work started from somewhere, right? I know that for me, most of the above of what was shared resonates in terms of, well, I wouldn't call myself type A perfectionist, but other people may say that I was. Okay. So, I didn't get to Stanford by sitting on my butt doing nothing. And in terms of the hustle and grind, coming from where I was coming from, handling my own path and goals, I just was always an ambitious person, and that translated even into the corporate career. And so I didn't have just one physical symptom moment like Sandra had, where she drove went into the driveway, right? And he felt the heart attack. For me, it was in the middle of sleep. It was in the middle of sleep. I woke up, it was around 3-4 in the morning. I was in California at the time, living in San Francisco. And I remember waking up and just like, I didn't want to wake up. Because whatever I was dreaming, I was like, oh, wait. It was at that moment in between where you're about to wake up and you're like, I was essentially like, I don't want to wake up. Let me stay in the dream world. Let me stay in the dream world. Right. And that was moment number one. That was month 3 of corporate. Because prior to that, I had multiple other jobs, but they weren't corporate. And then it kept on continuing. And at some point, a couple years later, it became this thing on my fingers that the doctors didn't know. And I was sent to multiple different doctors, the oncologists, the general physician, the the people who do the blood doctor, the skin doctor. Like, they sent me to everyone, and everyone was like, "What is this?" Some people don't know what it is, and I was like, "I don't know what it is either." And then what happened was I left the environment, and all of a sudden I healed. My fingers and hands just healed. They just magically healed, right? And so, hindsight is 2020. Hindsight is 2020. Okay. We're going to continue and let's continue on this path of the symptoms and signs, right? So, Kate, what is a sign or symptom of burnout that you think individuals should be aware of, and its connection to mental health? And maybe something you experienced, maybe something you didn't experience, but yes.
Actually, what you just said is fascinating, and I've heard this part of your story before and never made this connection, but because my background is in Chinese medicine, I was an acupuncturist, a practitioner for over 15 years. One of the things that I might have diagnosed you with at that time is called liver qi stagnation. And when the liver is overwhelmed, which is typically by stress and emotions, and it gets stuck, there's no free flow of qi, as one might say. The emotions that are attached to that are anger, resentment, frustration, irritation, annoyance. So a lot of times liver qi stagnation is a very common set of symptoms that's related to burnout. So we're talking tight neck and shoulders, headaches, hard time digesting your food, lots of bloating, maybe IBS, and those emotional things that I just mentioned. So and one of the things that the liver does is it in Chinese medicine, not the actual organ, the organ system. One of the things that the liver organ system does in Chinese medicine is sends qi and blood to the fingers and toes, to the tips, to the ends. So when your liver qi isn't moving smoothly, then you won't have enough feeling. You will have something will be wrong in the ends of your fingers and toes. So that's a really interesting thing to kind of connect that physical symptom with some of the mental symptoms, emotional symptoms that might have popped up as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Kay. Look at me learning something new about the past. Listen, it's never too late to learn about what happened 10 years ago, folks. Never too late to learn. Love that. Thank you. I'm going to look that up now. Fantastic. Sandra, I know you had mentioned already some of the physical symptom that you experienced, but anything else you wanted to share? Sandra? Oh, she left. All right, Aileen, you know what? You are on our screen. Aileen, here you go.
All right, jump right in. And Kate, that's very interesting because I doubled down on acupuncture big time during my season of life, and it was always liver qi stagnation. So connecting lots of dots here. I'd say my colleagues here are going to laugh if I quote Herbert Freudenberger again and the 3 criteria for burnout. So I will not be the nerd that I usually am in this with the signs and symptoms, because that's easily Googleable. And Kate, probably that's when you were like, check, check, check. Those are probably the criteria that came up. But some others that might be less talked about that I think could be little data points or anecdata are overstimulation. So if you notice that, especially if it's different than your usual capacity for stimulation. So if you used to play music in your house when you're cooking and stuff like that, and then that's too much for you, that's data. Or you used to be able to kind of go out to dinner and this and that, and then it's just too noisy, too stimulating for you. There's some data there. And then on that same kind of note, your startle reflex. So if you're kind of more, and your partner walks around from the corner and you notice you're much more easily able to be startled, that can be data too, that your nervous system is just very much on edge and heightened. So I wanted to share some less discussed symptoms that might come up for people.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Aileen. Yeah, we had someone put in the private chat. One of our panelists said the tired but wired. Yeah, Kate said the tired but wired. Yes. So thinking about it for yourself, for those listening, right? Are you in that state where maybe you're a little more wired than usual? Perhaps you're a little more wired than usual. Okay, and so it may not be easily noticeable, but if you take the time, right, to have that awareness, because first step is awareness. First step is awareness of the issue, and then you can address the next as well too, right? And apparently wiry is the energy also associated with the liver. That liver. Okay. Dr. Sandra, welcome back.
Thank you.
And any additional things you can share?
I would say there's also that feeling, that sense that something's not right, and it's not right, but you keep trying to ignore it. The thing we often do with burnout is we want to hide from what we feel. So don't hide, right? Just notice and be compassionate about what you experience and be willing to take a look at it. And then if you leave your office every day and you get to your car and you just feel like you have to cry, or you feel like I could barely make it to my car, or sometimes you're at the end of the day and you don't have enough energy to actually leave the office. Those are those small little things that are telling you like burnout is literally hiding in plain sight. It's like right here. I'm just not looking at it. I can't leave. I'm so tired, but I can't go. I'm in the car and all I want to do is cry. Oh my God, it's the day I have to go into the office and I can't, that dread. Those are things that are telling you that are not always obvious, or people are saying to you, you are doing so good, and you're just feeling like everything is crap. Those are good signs that something's not right and that you want to pay attention to healing your burnout.
That dread. Okay. And I like it brought back some memories. Yes, that dread. Yes, it did indeed. I remember at some point I used to, they say running is calming, so I would like run at some point. And I was doing it for a really good amount of time. I was like, oh, look at me running. And then at some point when I would run, I would get even angrier at the end. And so I had to stop running. I was like, it's common for other people, not common for me. It was a whole thing. But anyways, we have talked a lot about the individuals and the signs and the symptoms, right? I want to also shift the discussion and add on the organizations. So for those of you, perhaps you're saying to yourself, okay, how do I know as a leader, right? But maybe you yourself as a leader, you've experienced burnout yourself. But how can you recognize maybe within your family members, the people you see around you, your coworkers, your colleagues? How can organizations and leaders recognize and address burnout among their employees effectively? And so, Audrey, I'd like to turn this question over to you.
Yeah. And I just want to validate how challenging this can be, right? A lot of us have shared stories where we were literally working in fields where we're supposed to understand burnout and stress reduction. And here we are experiencing it ourselves and not really seeing it. So I just want to say how challenging it can be as an individual and as a leader to recognize people who are experiencing burnout. And often people, burnout is one of those things that has stigma around it. Like people who are burnt out, that they're weak in some way, shape, or form. But actually, a lot of people and most people who experience burnout are the people who are really, really good at hiding it. They're really good at pushing through. They're really good at shutting down, challenging emotions or things that they're just going to push through, right? They're just going to keep going. So this can be a really challenging thing to just recognize from the outside. So one of the things that can be really beneficial is building relationships with your employees so that you are able to check in with them. Because you can't necessarily recognize burnout from the outside all the time. And if you can, it's usually at a really bad point, right? Once you're recognizing burnout from an outsider's perspective, it's probably already gotten pretty bad. Some subtle signs that you might see in your employees is people starting to be silent, right? Maybe there was communication, maybe there was feedback, people being engaged, and all of a sudden they're kind of withdrawing. You're not really hearing from them. They're not really, chatting it up, or you just feel like, where is so-and-so? And maybe for you, that feels like a relief because you're like, great, one less person to manage. But that is a sign that you should be paying attention to. People who are sensitive to become all of a sudden really sensitive to feedback, especially if that wasn't their usual thing. And that kind of goes with Aileen, right? When she was talking about that kind of jumpiness, that kind of lack of capacity, right? When people are up to here already, you start to add some feedback that is hard for somebody to hear, and they already feel like they're at their limit, that they can be really reactive to that. And, we'll talk a little bit more, I think, in the future during today, like some of those things that can cause burnout organizationally also. And maybe people's productivity has changed. So again, these are things that in order for you to notice it within an organization or as a leader, you have to have some sort of relationship with the people that you're working with. Right? Like you're not just going to look at a spreadsheet, see a bunch of numbers and know if somebody's burnt out. That's just not the way it works. So there has to be some sort of relational aspect to you and your employees in order to be able to even have these conversations. And education is important. So the fact that you are listening to this or just curious about burnout in general is really important. But again, we were all really educated about burnout and we still found ourselves in it. So this is a complex issue, and just starting to pay attention is really a good opportunity for you to help your employees.
Yes. The emotional intelligence, right? That emotional intelligence, but also that courage to communicate, right? That courage to take the next step and to say, hey, I'm noticing something a little bit different. Let's chat about it. Love that. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Sharon, pass it over to you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
One of the things that Audrey said, which I totally resonated with, is the change in productivity. And, we often talk about burnout as something that happens when people are over-engaged and, they're just doing too much. And so they're running around and they're in that hamster wheel. They never stop and they're expending all this energy, and no wonder they're exhausted. We also have the opposite situation happen, which is maybe a little bit harder to spot, which is that disengagement where people are kind of just flying under the radar. And it's interesting because when we think about, what the goal of maybe coaching might be, you might think, well, we want engagement to go up. But I think it's important to first ask yourself, where is the baseline for this person? And if they're over engaged, actually the goal might be to reduce their engagement, because if they're giving their work too much, then they're actually in that process of burning themselves out. We got to get them to a level that's more reasonable. So if you're somebody that works, 24/7, we need to scale it back a little bit just so that you have some time to recover that energy. And I actually just made a video about this because I thought it was interesting. One of my clients that I assessed after we worked together, his engagement went down, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I'm like, usually we see things moving up. What does this actually mean? And I was like, well, he was off the charts to begin with, right? So we have to consider where people are at and not have just a flat solution about this is what we're looking for in all cases. So engagement is something that we talk about a lot when it comes to work in terms of productivity and profitability, but we also have to be considerate of, is there under engagement? And usually that happens if somebody is bored and under challenged, or is there over engagement? And usually that's because they're just working too much, too hard, too fast, and they need to slow down.
Yes, absolutely. Love that. Right. So it's like, where are they in terms of where were they in the past and where are they now? And how do you, have that awareness, not only yourself, but now of your team. Right. And so, and of course, as Audrey pointed out, the fact that you're even here listening to us here on the panel is already a great step in showing that you are getting that level of attention and awareness on what's happening around you. So thank you, ladies, for sharing. I'm being mindful of time. And for those of you who are listening, we are going to have a Q&A time as well. So type your questions in the comment section. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, essentially you scroll to the bottom, type your question in the comments. If you're watching the replay, still also type your questions in the comments. All right. We will get notified as well of any questions that you comment. So feel free to type your questions in the comment, and we will have time for the panel here to answer your questions. And so continuing on what Sharon was saying, I want to fast forward to the preventive measures conversation, right? So how can leaders and managers support their team's mental well-being while maintaining productivity, right? What are some tips for that? I'd love to start off with Audrey for that question, and then we can go to Kate.
Yeah, so one of the things, there's some big causes that come up really often. One of the Gallup survey talked about some of the big things that came up for reasons that people tend to burn out in the workplace. And there's a couple of different things that I think are really interesting. One of them is lack of role clarity, when people are just not really sure what they're supposed to be doing. Lack of communication support from their manager, which goes back to my past point where you need to have some sort of relationship with folks. So one of the things that can be really helpful is being really sure, because even when we talk about burnout, right? Like, what do we mean by burnout? We can dig into that, and you can look at past conversations we've all had where we've literally dug into the definition of burnout, what it means, what it looks like, right? So really being clear about what the expectations are, right? Especially if you have people who are working really hard, they're going to work extra hard if they're not sure what is expected. What is my role? What are the expectations? And context is really important, right? What is a high priority? Well, high priority in one context is going to be different than another high priority in a different context. So constant communication, clarifying your expectations, and then clarifying these terms with yourself as a leader or as a manager, because people will hear what you say, but they're going to pay attention to who you are and what you do, right? That's really, really important. So you're leading by example and being really clear about how you're leading, who you're leading, and what you're leading them to do is going to be really helpful so that people can anchor to a vision that's going to help them to push out all of the other things that they don't need to waste their energy on.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that with us, Audrey. Kate, anything you would like to add?
One of the easiest things that I think is very implementable and doesn't really require leaders to be psychiatrists, which sometimes it feels like we're asking leaders to do more than is their job, especially middle management is getting it from both sides. But one of the most basic, well-studied, evidence-based things we can do is shorten meetings to 20 and 50 minutes instead of 30 and 60 minutes. Those 10 minutes literally change the brain activity of the people working. Having those 10 minutes, being able to stand, being able to go to the bathroom, being able to drink water, being able to clear your head before another meeting starts, being able to, it changes focus, it changes creative problem solving, it changes communication patterns, it changes emotional regulation. So if you get nothing else out of this today, fight for shorter meetings, because I promise you that 30-minute meeting can be done in 20. I promise you that hour-long meeting can be done in 50. So really be careful about creating transition space for people, because our brains really need it.
And if you're in a physical office space, okay, people need time to walk as well to the meeting too, just on a practical note. But yes, in terms of, how are you making best use of your energy, right? Not only as individuals, but the people around you. How are you making best use of the energy? And how are you ensuring that you're being mindful, right? So we talked about the meeting tips, talk about communicating with people. Now that's the team side. If we return to the individuals, right, are there any specific tools, resources, or practices that you recommend for individuals maintaining a healthy work-life balance? Let's start with Aileen, and then we'll go to Dr. Sandra.
I would say, well, Kate, I have a company that I work with, and they implement that, and they have all workshops start at 5 minutes after to buffer for that. And everyone seems a lot happier when they join. I'll say that. So it's fun to see what you've mentioned, the evidence says, being implemented by organizations. In terms of work-life integration, I like to say more than balance, because I think there's never really a full balance. One thing to consider for everyone, whether you're a leader, individual contributor, is to think about prioritizing your sleep. So no matter where you are in relation to the burnout scale, sleep is going to be your best friend. And that's easier said than done. If you are currently managing a lot of stress right now, you might be cursing me a little bit or rolling your eyes. I understand that, especially like Sharon mentioned, we stress about the stress, and then if we aren't sleeping well, we stress about the sleep we're not getting, and it can be the self-fulfilling prophecy. So know that if you can, there often is some wiggle room to prioritize and protect your sleep a little bit more, or to ask for resources and support. Acupuncture, again, coming back to that, is great. And what you can do to protect that will undoubtedly help you buffer against burnout, move through your burnout, recover from it, as well as boost your productivity. So that's one tool. I'll try and keep it short, and we can always come back to more. I'll pass it over to Dr. Sandra.
All right. So I think the one thing that I could add is that we can be proactive about rest. That's becoming a buzzword. In the past year or so, more discussions about how to be proactive about taking time off, really using your paid time off, but also your everyday, right? This is like old energy management, research, where every day you just build recovery into your day. I call it making well-being and productivity partners. A productive person is not always a well person, but if you want to be productive, you pay attention to your wellness. What are the ways you can take a break? You can get up, you can take a walk, you can keep your hula hoop. I keep my hula hoop near, so I hula hoop every now and then. It's very good for that belt meridian, right, Kate? So, right, gets the upper and the lower to balance with each other. So you need these little things that you can do every day to recover, so that you can reaccess your creativity and your energy to be present and to make the impact that matters to you.
I think about, athletes, right? Even athletes, high performing athletes in the Olympics, what do? Sleep and rest. It's part of the regime. Their structure is to sleep and rest, right? And they're performing at the top of their game, literally. So, right. And so it's really, I think, emphasizes that importance of, because I think there's some here, especially if you're struggling with the perfectionist or the hustle and grind, there's some level of what is sleep. I know I was there where I was like, oh, sleep is a waste of time, literally. You know what I could be doing instead of sleeping? Doing 15 million other things on my email, okay? Or whatever it was that I had to do on a to-do list. And so, but sleep is just as powerful as when you're awake and what are you doing when you're awake. What I will say is that I do believe there is balance, but that's a whole nother conversation. We don't have time for all that. And I will also note that, yes, the PTO is also very important. I know I took a lot of PTO. Actually, I was known for taking PTO when I was back in the corporate space. Unfortunately, though, the PTO does not heal the liver. So I still, so even after all that PTO I took, I still ended up not one in the HR office because of the microaggressions I was experiencing, but also two in the doctor's offices as well too, because of now these new symptoms that I was experiencing as well. So I say that to say that we're presenting these solutions, but know that it is not a you do one of these and it will solve the entire thing, right? It is a combination of many different factors that will help you to heal effectively and for you to ensure that you are maintaining that high performance and high productivity so that you can stick around and you can be around. Because something we haven't talked about is that, listen, folks, stress kills. Stress kills. And so you want to ensure that you are showing up not only for your own goals, your own objectives, but also for the people around you, for the things that matter to you. Okay. So with that being said, I would love to, and for those of you who have questions, feel free to type your questions in the comments. We are going to enter into the Q&A time and address those. But to close us out here in terms of this portion of our discussion, rapid fire roundtable. Each panelist, okay, we talked about a lot of problems, going to the solutions. Each panelist, what's one strategy, one technique that you recommend? If someone just tuned in to our LinkedIn Live here today and they're like, okay, what's one thing I can take away? What's one strategy, one technique that you recommend for cultivating resilience or managing stress in a high pressure work situation, okay, while also maintaining top performance and high productivity? All right, we're going to go, but I'm saying the order too. We're going to go Sharon. We're going to go backwards. We're going to go Sharon, Dr. Sandra. So Dr. Sharon, Dr. Sandra. Then we're going to go to Audrey. No, then Kate. Then Audrey. Then Aileen. I'm trying to do alphabetical order, but reverse. Okay, cool. So we're going to go Dr. Sharon, Dr. Sandra, Kate, Audrey, then Aileen. Okay.
So I'm going to keep this really short, and we already alluded to it in the beginning, but I think one of the things that is possibly a simple concept, but something that obviously takes time to wrap your head around, is the idea that the way that you think about stress actually matters. There's been a lot of research that talks about the placebo effect, and the way that we think about things and our beliefs actually change our results. And so if you think about stress as only one-sided, right? We just talked about how stress kills, and certainly chronic stress is what leads to burnout. We know all the negative things related to stress. Sometimes I'll do a workshop and I'll ask, so what are your associations with the word stress? And everything that comes in the chat is negative, right? It's overwhelm, it's exhaustion, it's all these things. And it's like, yes, and what are the upsides to stress? Because stress is there for a reason. And it's actually something that if you know how to leverage it, can actually be your competitive advantage. And so if there's one thing that I want to leave you with is think about how stress can serve you and how to be more aware of what that threshold is for you, so that if you're noticing you're going kind of over the hump, to find ways to bring yourself back.
Dr. Sandra.
All right. So I would say to help you with that sort of being more sensitive to what's happening inside of you, it are simple mindfulness techniques. Because remember, I said that you want to listen to your body. Think of your body as your closest partner. You can get really intimate with your body by doing simple things like noticing the smell of your coffee, your tea, noticing what your favorite sweater feels like. Just use your senses, like get deep into the smell and the taste of that orange that you're eating. Get deep into the smell and the taste of the soup that you're having. Just feel, allow yourself to feel and get used to feeling, so that as you are coming toward burnout, you actually start to hear your body a little bit more. So use very, very simple mindfulness practices to just tune in so that you can be a partner with your body.
Kate.
All right. So I want you to eliminate stupid stressors that you're putting up with. And here's the example. One of my neighbors works from home most of the time, and she told me recently that she's been wearing blue light blocking glasses because she has an old extra monitor that was given to her for free from a friend that is so bright, and she cannot adjust the brightness because it's old and it's not really working properly anymore. And so she was getting headaches and migraines. So instead of getting a new monitor, she tried to buy glasses to deal with the monitor. Folks, buy the new monitor. buy the new monitor. There are a million small things that you are putting up with on a day-to-day basis. Your uncomfortable chair, the wrong computer monitor, a crappy camera, not the right lighting in your room, whatever it happens to be. Whatever thing that you are putting up with in your workspace, upgrade it for yourself, because you might not be able to control all of the stressors that are coming into your life and your job, right? You don't control all the pieces of your job, but you do control the environment that you're sitting in most of the time. So even if you can't get a brand new chair because your work won't promote it, then get a different pillow. Buy one of those donuts to sit on. Do whatever you have to do. But get rid of the stressors, the things that you are putting up with that are making you react, that are forcing you to be uncomfortable and unwell, and adding to your overall issues and not adding to your overall anything else. They're not adding to productivity. They're not adding to. So get rid of the dumb stressors.
Audrey.
I love all of this. And I'm going to +1 to all of that. And I'm also going to say that this is for if any of you are starting from where I was starting from as an individual, which is that like I could not tell you an emotion. I couldn't tell you a feeling. I had no name for anything other than I feel good and I feel bad. That's actually a really good starting place. So one of the things that you can start to notice, just like Dr. Sandra was saying, is noticing sensations, noticing smells, like starting to tune into your senses. One of the things that is really important to start to build a connection with is this thing called interoception, which is our sense of our inner body, like our heart rate and our breathing, our digestion, when we're hungry, right? Just starting to tune in, because what can happen is we can lose connection with that and then we lose the information, right? Our body is always giving us information. So starting to tune in to those feelings inside of us, because there's actually been studies have shown that people who are in touch, like have higher interoception, so they're more in touch with that inner world of theirs, they deal with high stress environments better, and sometimes they make more money. I can't guarantee results, all right? But starting to tune into those and giving them just very basic flavors. Is it a pleasant flavor, right? Does it feel pleasant to me, or does it feel unpleasant to me? Does it feel energized to me, right? Is it a bit of an activating feeling, or is it a little bit of a deactivating feeling? So sometimes naming things can be like beyond where we're able to reach, especially if you're already in a burnout state. So just starting to build a relationship with those inner sensations is a really good start to help you access all of these other things. So if you're starting from really, really like very, very basic, like I was, that might be a good starting point for you.
Last but not least, Aileen.
All right. So actually, I want to point to one data point about what Kate shared. If you're like, oh, those things won't make a difference, they genuinely do. I have the Aura Ring, and I'm not sponsored, but when I think I'm pretty comfortable in my office here, but when I work from the couch, if I don't have client calls or presentations, I kick the legs up, get cozy under a blanket, have my tea. It always is measured in my stress levels on my Aura Ring, doing the exact same work as I'm doing at my desk. So clearly there's something that is much more cozy and comfortable when I'm working from the couch, and the data shows it. So I just want to speak to Kate's point, just because I think we can think these things sound either woo-woo or like they won't move the needle, but they genuinely add up if you think about how many of those can happen throughout the day. So then my strategy is kind of pulling in what everyone else shared, but the specific tool is breathing. We do this without thinking, but you might think, hey, what Audrey shared sounds great, but how do I interocept? How do I turn inward? I don't know if that's an actual verb, but what's a tool to get there? And just simply tuning into your breath, like Dr. Sandra shared this mindful awareness, but we all know what our breath feels like. We can just get more curious, and sometimes having an external guide saying, hey, count to this amount, or put your hand on your chest, put your hand on your belly, and having someone direct us towards where sensation can facilitate that more for us. So either trying on your own or being guided to very simple breathing techniques will help you build interoception, will help you build that mindful presence and awareness. It will help you get into your parasympathetic state. So it kind of is your burnout prevention and recovery multitasking tool that you can bring anywhere, anytime, which is great.
Love all of those. Okay, I love all of those. I think when a few things that came to mind for me was the getting rid of dumb stressors, right? That Kate had mentioned. It reminds me of, I'm also not sponsored, of the Thumbtack commercials that I've been seeing, where ultimately they're essentially saying, you know, someone is struggling with like plumbing their own toilet, and then Thumbtack is like, you can just call somebody to do that for you. Like, why are you stressing out about this? Just call somebody, right? And so it reminds me of that situation, right? Just call somebody to do it for you, kind of situation, and or just finding ways to simplify your life, right? Simplifying your life and the emotional management. Okay, that Dr. Sandra, Audrey, Aileen, Sharon have mentioned, the feelings wheel. The feelings wheel has been so amazing. I think someone put me on the feelings wheel. I think early 2021. I found out about the feelings wheel.
Yeah.
This feelings wheel, okay, is a wheel of ways. It's a wheel of wonder, all right, to help you identify the specific emotion and feeling that you are feeling. Okay, so instead of just happy, sad, you gotta sit there and say, okay, I am discouraged. I'm frustrated. I'm optimistic. I am hopeful. Okay, so love the feelings wheel for those who are, you know, looking for more of an emotional management, ways to put specific words to it. Feelings wheel, have that next door to you, nearby, print it out, and then tap into the breathing exercises to tune into your senses. Okay, get that introception in there as well too. Love that. And what I'll add is a statement here that I love sharing with people. Get rid of the trash to make room for the treasure. All right, this could be people trash. This could be you know, trash in terms of literal trash that's in your trash. This could be clutter. All right, so organizing things, and that was mentioned earlier as well, in terms of organizing and decluttering. And so get rid of that trash to make room for the treasure. Get rid of it in a moral, ethic, legal, safe way, please. But with that being said, ensuring that you are making room for some cleansing, right? That cleansing process. And that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual cleansing process. Okay. And I see that we have a couple of comments here, specifically from Deborah here, who mentioned that they had to leave their job as a school librarian for complex PTSD. Okay. And essentially it was like that job led to that stress, right? Those stressors led to that unhealthy sort of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual state, right? And because it relates to what we've been talking about, where, you know, for those of us here, we are lucky to have survived the burnout situation, right? We're like, there are those who they faint and they never wake up, unfortunately, you know? And so what I will end is also one final question. Maybe all or just one to two can respond. How can individuals differentiate between normal workplace stress and actual burnout? Because stress can also be a good thing, right? We talked about that a little bit, but stress can also be a good thing. Okay. So how can individuals differentiate between normal workplace stress and actual burnout? Is there even such a thing? Who wants to respond?
Yes, there is such a thing.
Okay. Yes.
I threw my hand up immediately when you said that, because the delineation factor is actually quite simple. Most of us are going to experience stress. And like Dr. Sharon said, some of it's good, some of it's bad. Like, okay, fine, whatever, we deal with it. But when stress turns into burnout, when the line has been crossed, the difference is that we have no more bounce back ability. We do not recover. So if you're just stressed, you take the weekend, or maybe it's a long weekend. We've got one coming up, right? So you take the long weekend, and maybe you don't love your job, but you're ready to go back on Tuesday, and you have the energy and you're refreshed, and you took a few days and you're feeling okay. When you are burnt out, you could take off a month and you don't feel any different. You are unable to bounce back. You are unable to recover. You have lost your bandwidth emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. This is the massive delineator. Either you can bounce back from it or you can't. When you find yourself in a place that you can't, you are burnt out.
And what we've talked about here today has been, thank you, Kate. Love that bounce back ability. I think you have a book on that. Do you have a book on that? Yes. Kate does have a book on that. So feel free to look that up. But with that being said, right, and what we've talked about here today on the Burnout Panel, the state of mental health, has been that, you know, you don't want to get to the point where you are burned out, right? If you are at that point where you're burned out, there are solutions for you. But how can you also recognize the stages before, because there are stages before as well, right? So if you need to listen to this again, please do, so that you can get these awareness and support that you need to ensure that you are tackling the mental health, right? The reason why May is Mental Health Awareness Month and not just a mental health month, right? Is awareness on your own and awareness on your employees' well-being can dramatically shift your productivity, your organizational success, your own success. And we hope that through this panel here today, you've also realized and seen some solutions for not only yourself, but also your team and your company. If you would like to connect with us, the Burnout Panel, perhaps you are looking to offer or host some day-long trainings for your team, you're welcome to message us directly on the LinkedIn page, Burnout Panel, the Burnout Panel LinkedIn page. Follow us and message us, and definitely someone will reach out to you to schedule that. As we wrap up, any final words from the panel?
I'm just super psyched to be here with everybody. I feel like every time we have one of these, I learn something new. I learn something different. I hear something slightly perks my ears up that I hadn't heard said a certain way. So I think this is really valuable. Again, it's like, if I'm understanding something slightly differently, this is going to be really beneficial for anybody who's listening to come back and listen to this again, or listen to some of our past recordings, because you may pick up something at a different opportunity when you're looking for resources, because we have created a lot of resources over the last year. Like, head in there, listen to it, and you will pick up a new nugget that can be really helpful. So I really encourage people to go back and look at some of our past recordings.
I also want to add that a lot of times when we're stuck in this state, we feel like we're the only ones. As somebody mentioned earlier, there's a lot of shame that goes along with it. I know I've had a lot of clients that at the end of it, even though they've had an amazing experience, they don't want to leave a testimonial because they're like, I don't want anybody to know that I had burnout. It's still something that we're dealing with in terms of changing the stigma. But what I want you to know, if you're listening to this, is that you are definitely not alone. This is definitely an epidemic. And as somebody here mentioned, there are a lot of resources, and us 6 on this panel alone have created a ton of resources between books, podcasts, coaching programs, you name it. So you can look up any one of us and go to our websites, and there's going to be tons of stuff out there for you so that you don't have to figure this out on your own.
Yes, love that. Thank you both, Audrey and Dr. Sharon. And shout out to our producer here today, Ashley. You can't see her on the back end producer, yay. Absolutely. We are the Burnout Panel: Vanessa Zammy, Aileen Axmeyer, Audrey Hulse, Wave Ladies Wave, Kate Donovan, Dr. Sandra Lewis, and Dr. Sharon Grossman. And thank you all. Enjoy your vacations. If you are going to do that, enjoy your time with your family, your friends, your coworkers.